Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 233 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, joined by a full house tonight, starting with the man himself, Dave Choate at the Falcoholic. Dave, how are we doing tonight?
We're in a good mood, man. It's been a fun start to free agency, so I love it.
It has been. It's been more active than like maybe the last 3 or 4 free agencies combined, it feels like. So no complaints.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the last like 7.
Right. Maybe. You might be right about that. Also joining us tonight, my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are you doing tonight?
Doing very well. I am wondering if Terry Fontenot decided to give himself the day off today because we've heard no news. So, maybe it was one of those, all right, I'm gonna take a nice relaxing day to myself today.
Well, we after we have conquered, you need a day of rest, right? I think that's what he's trying to implement, a healthy lifestyle. So I approve of that. I appreciate Terry Fontenot knowing when to take a step back and evaluate and not overstep. But yeah, it was like funny after, like, it just seemed like it was just move after move, and then today was just kind of quiet. But hey, you can't hate. I'm very, very happy with everything that's happened so far, and I'm sure we will get. Yeah. Go
Also,
ahead.
shout out to Scar in the chat saying that Dave looks like he's in a witness protection program right now.
Yeah, I think all the Dave Meat stuff maybe was scaring him
I'll
a little
fix
bit,
that.
so
Hold
now
on.
he's in
Hold on.
darkness. Yeah.
Taking Aaron Rodgers' advice.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
the darkness retreat, exactly. But as you can see, we also have with us Alan Strk at Alan Strk on the Twitters. Alan, how are you doing tonight?
Oh man, I'm thrilled. Like, it's the first time in a long time I'm buzzing about Falcons off season. Although this past hour we've gotten some unfortunate news, but look, that comes with free agency. Not everything's gonna be 100%. But nevertheless, oh man, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
I was either talking about the Jamal Williams signing or the Isaiah Oliver signing.
Both.
Yeah. Both. Yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
that's
or
the
the
thing.
Miles Sanders signing too. Shit.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah.
Let's see Miles Sanders not running behind that Eagles offensive line. I'll say that much.
Very fair. Very fair. But yeah, guys, as you know, we got a lot to cover tonight, and we're going to get through as much of it as we can, as well as I know we have some questions already. So yeah, let's get right to it. I'm going to let it be player's choice tonight. We'll go around talking about the moves in the order that you guys want. So we'll start with the boss man, Dave Choate, guest of the hour. Dave, why don't you kick us off? Who do you want to highlight first?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
There's so many. I mean,
there are so many signings. I think I'm going to go with Kaden Elliss because to me he's such an interesting signing. A guy who looms potentially as like a versatile chess piece for the Falcons, but also a guy who has one truly great year under his belt. And then, before that, barely any starts, primarily special teams work. So, the Falcons gave him the kind of contract that suggests, Ryan Nielsen's pretty confident this is a guy that we're going to feel good around the next couple of years. But it's hard to know, whether that faith is justified or not until we see him out there. So, like, to me, like, you had a mix of signings of guys that we've seen already succeed in Atlanta, right? Re-signings and so forth. You have guys with track records like David Onyemata, who have been good for many years now. And then Ellis is sort of that outlier where, it's a leap of faith to bring him in and say, this is who this guy is, what we saw last year, and he's going to be great. And if they're right, I think, having him and maybe a second year Troy Anderson working together is going to be ridiculously fun. And if they're wrong, it's not the end of the world. But it really did kind of stand out to me, I think, out of all the signings that they made, as the one that maybe has the greatest boom bust potential. So that was an interesting one to me, and maybe the only one that gave me any pause. But
yeah,
it's been a wildly successful, in my mind, assuming all these guys actually sign, first couple of days of legal tampering and so forth.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Ellis one is one that I think that is very underrated. Really a kind of a 1-year wonder type of player, but very productive. Had certainly more sacks than any Falcons player, playing sort of that strong side linebacker role for the Saints. PFF loved him as well. So, you know, if anyone would know, like, if he was sort of a fluke or a guy that is just on the upswing in a big way, it would be Ryan Nielsen. And that's why I feel so confident about the former Saints that were signed, because who would know any better than Nielsen? And like Fontenot to some extent too would know, I would think. But in terms of the recent guys, like who would know better than the guy that literally just was there coaching these guys every single day? So yeah, Ellis is a really interesting one. And I think people underestimate that he does provide some of that pass rush ability as well, like a significant amount. I mean, 7 sacks was more than any other Falcons player, almost double, right? Because I think Carter had the most with like 4.5 or something. So, you know, not anything to discount there with Kaden Elliss. Yeah, anybody else want to touch on Ellis?
I really like that Dave mentioned it because I think he was underrated. Didn't he get signed like at 10 o'clock or technically signed?
It was late. Yeah.
I just remember being like 10 o'clock on a Monday and his name popping up. So I think it just caught everyone by surprise. And like, you look in New Orleans with DeMario Davis and Pete Warner, arguably the best linebacking combination in the league. It's kind of understandable why Ellis didn't get necessarily all the snaps that we know, playing a strong side linebacker, he played 30, 35% of the time, that formation at most. So the limited snaps are understandable, but wow, you look the way he's graded and just coming from that New Orleans defense, it's exciting. Like I can't say I recall too much from him, but look, I think the numbers speak for itself, and I just think having that versatility is so key. We preach about it all the time, whether you're on the line, linebacker, corner, safety, whatever position may be, to have that versatility. So whether he's playing more on the weak side or strong side, I'm really curious to see how he's utilized, and I think he'd be a huge asset as a blitzer as well, given that how much the Falcons have struggled in recent years when it comes to utilizing linebackers from a blitzing standpoint. Because other than Foye Oluokun in like 2020, I can't remember a Falcons linebacker really shining as a blitzer from the linebacker position. So
Deion Jones had like that 1 year, right? But that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. But besides that, like I think they could use more there, and hopefully just the familiarity of Ryan Nielsen, you have to be excited about it. So great call, Dave. Shout out Kaden Elliss.
Yeah,
I think we'll forget about him.
I know that counting stats are kind of overrated, and they completely depend on scheme and situation. But Ellis as a linebacker had 7 sacks last year. That was highly referenced by Rappaport, by all the reporters. The last time a Falcon had 7 sacks, and I tweeted this out, was Vic Beasley in 2019 when he had 8 sacks. So the Falcons haven't had a single player reach that many in 3 seasons. And, in addition to that pass rushing prowess, it was a really good run defender too. PFF graded his run defense, I think, as like an 81 last year, which is high end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the Falcons got him a bit more on the cheap. Annual average like $7 million a year. I'm pretty sure the last year will be unguaranteed. And if he continues what we saw last year, that's going to look like a hell of a bargain. And it's baked into the cost that he only had that 1 season. He started 11 games. He wasn't really like a full-on starter, but I was noticing a lot of Saints fans were very upset at losing Ellis, especially to the Falcons. So,
yeah.
He's still very young. I think his best years could be ahead of him. So this could be one of those signings where we look back on it and we're like, yeah, that was, bang for your buck. That was maybe even the best signing of the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an underrated one, and probably not the one people expected us to talk about off the top of the show, but that's why I wanted to open it up, because I think it allows some opportunities to talk about some of these guys that maybe are a little bit underrated. So that was a good one to start us off. Dave, I'll go with our next guest, Alan. Who do you want to highlight next here?
Should we stick with the Saints theme? I know,
Sure.
I know we're missing the crown jewel of it all, but we've been talking about Daniel Onyemata or Dave. I've been calling him Daniel for like 5 years. It's David. I need to pinpoint this, damn it. Nevertheless, Onyemata, I think everyone's kind of been targeting, and I do like the deal that they signed. I thought some people thought, oh, how can you pay a 30-year-old? But I think defensive tackles in general, especially the high-end ones, age well.
Yeah.
And he's someone that's been very durable outside the PED suspension. And he's just violent, which is When have we described the Falcons defensive line as violent? Like besides Grady Jarrett, like I just miss seeing like this, the hand usage, the sweat, the moves. Like you just
They're
want to
fast
see.
and physical. We've described them as fast and physical before.
Yeah. Long live Dan Quinn. It's just you watch him on tape, and it's not just throwing people around. It's just also he's just battling. Like he takes on double teams, and I just think Grady Jarrett needs support for so long. And yes, Taquan Grant made some strides, but Taquan Grant's still not a player I want to see playing 40, 45 snaps a game, at least not yet. So to get someone like Onyemata, it's getting the familiarity of Ryan Nielsen, I'm thrilled about it. And I think he just adds a new component to this defensive line. And I think you watch teams across the league, interior pressures just be so valuable. Look at the Eagles this year. Like they generate a lot of pressure inside. So if this is the start of the Falcons pass rush being competent and it has to start from inside, let's do it. So, huge plus seeing Onyemata come in. He's definitely someone I was eyeing.
Yeah, that's a great one to highlight as well. I'm also a big fan of it. It's one of the guys I was definitely pounding the table for. I think I had at the top of my list was Javon Hargrave, but I think we all knew that like he was going to be probably the most sought after interior free agent. So it was going to be really hard to convince him to come here over like literally every other team that he could choose from. But Onyemata, because of the connection with Nielsen and with Fontenot, definitely made a lot of sense. I mean, they're paying him a pretty good amount, but like you said, he's only 30, and it's only, I think, a 3-year deal, right? So it's not like he's going to be here till he's 35 or something. And he's just been very consistent as a pass rusher, consistent as a run defender. And he just finally gives Grady Jarrett someone to play next to him that's actually consistently good, effective as a pass rusher and run defender. And like you said, with Taquan Graham here too, Taquan Graham gets to be more of like the third guy off, like the first guy off the bench as opposed to like a premier starter. And I think that's a better role for him too. Like I think he'll look a lot better as that first guy off the bench, the next man up in the rotation than like a full-time starter. And maybe he can still grow into that good starter role. But I do like having him as your primary backup in this defensive line, which is suddenly looking a little bit better here. So, anybody else want to touch on the Onyemata signing?
Just to talk about, it may be a little bit, bit much regarding the salary, according to some people, and that is the price that you have to pay for a guy on the open market, 30 years old. But you look at the options at defensive line, and defensive tackle, interior defensive line, that was one of those positions of need for the Falcons coming into this free agency period. Daron Payne got tagged, and he signed a deal that he was well worth, the $90 million in Washington. He didn't even hit the market. The other big name next to Onyemata was Javon Hargrave from Philadelphia. And you look at the contract that he signed, 4 years, $84 million. Hargrave got more guaranteed than Onyemata got total in his contract.
Yeah.
And Hargrave is also another guy who's 30 years old. He's a year younger than Onyemata. But this is one of those, signings where last year of the deal, if Onyemata isn't what you expect him to be, you can part ways with him, save $10.5 million, $4 million dead cap hit, or you can post June 1st him and spread that dead cap hit 2 years or $2 million each year. So it's 2 years. He had two really, really strong elite seasons in 2020 and 2021. The PED suspension is a red flag for sure. Wasn't amazing last year. Had more sacks last year than in 2021, but he played more games. But he is someone that is easily the best defensive tackle that Grady Jarrett's ever played next to. And that Next Gen Stats, I'll read out a tweet that they posted. Onyemata generated a 10.6% pressure rate over the last 2 seasons, which is the 8th highest among all defensive tackles in the NFL. And the Falcons' defensive tackles generated a 5.3% pressure rate, which was last in the NFL, which is literally exactly half that of Onyemata by himself.
Yeah.
So the pass rush is there. He can get to the quarterback. He had 5 sacks last year, which, I mean, I think that would have been the team lead. I'm not entirely certain, but, it's certainly around there somewhere. But he and Grady Jarrett next to each other, this is going to be a big issue for offensive guards, for offensive linemen. And it really scored over the Saints because it forced them to swallow $10 million in dead cap. He's familiar with Nielsen, and this is probably a guy that Nielsen, just like with Ellis, probably went to bat for, because Onyemata was the first official free agent tampering signing, a free agent tampering announcement. It started out with Onyemata, and that tells me that they really circled his name like right off the bat.
Yeah, no, I like it, and I think it does show a commitment to improving that defensive line. And again, you certainly feel really good about any Saints defenders because of the Nielsen connection. Like, Nielsen's not bringing in the guys that were slacking off or were problems in the locker room or anything like that. Like, he would know better than anyone to be like, okay, these are the guys we need to get, and these are the ones that maybe are overrated, or people, that sort of thing. Like, the guys that the Falcons went after with Nielsen's blessing, I think, are the ones that we should expect to hit. This is, it's sort of like a cheat code, right? It's like, oh yeah, normally when you're signing a free agent, maybe you have some tangential connection through your history or whatever, but it's rare that you literally have their coach from the previous season on your staff as your defensive coordinator to make that happen. So got to take advantage of it. The Falcons certainly have. Yeah, Adnan as well. Who would you like to highlight? We still got several that we still haven't gotten to. So.
I know we've been waiting to talk about Taylor Heinicke the entire time.
Yes.
No. I will actually bring up Jessie Bates. Like, I know that the chat is waiting for us to talk about Jessie Bates.
You can leave Taylor Heinicke for me. He's mine. So
yeah. It's like Kaden Elliss is, underrated. Onyemata is good, but it's like, and thank you guys for leaving Jessie Bates for me. You guys are princes for sure. Yeah, absolute. This is the guy we were talking about ad nauseum. Since the season ended, Bates was a prospective free agent. We had that dinner, the speculation of him having the dinner with Pitts, Casey Hayward, and AJ Terrell. And how often does it happen that it's a guy that the fan base really circles, the fan base really wants? And we're probably in Dave's mentions, all off season. Dave, you can confirm or deny here, talking about we need Jessie Bates. We need to sign Jessie Bates. We need, Dave can tweet something random out, and it's, oh no, but Dave, what about Jessie Bates? And how often does it happen that it works out exactly like that? In the first day, after a few hours, I've gotten so used to hoping for something and then just having that, like, Woj bomb or the Ian Rappaport bomb or like whatever, and like, across various sports, just, I was bracing myself for that, oh, Jessie Bates is signing with the Cleveland Browns or something. But no, like, he signed with us. He signed with the Falcons. The contract is very, very manageable. Like, I did not think that he would sign for that little. $14 million a year. It's not nothing. It's not chump change. But, for a safety who was an all-pro to go into his prime and to hit the open market, you definitely expect him to get around the higher end of the spectrum, around what Derwin James got with the Chargers. $14 million, that slots him in as the 4th highest paid safety in the NFL, like on annual average. And he could go down to 5th depending on what Gardner Johnson gets. Bates is the biggest free agent signing that the Falcons have had since Alex Mack, without any question. He is someone that I think will stabilize Atlanta's secondary the way that Alex Mack stabilized Atlanta's offensive line after that really, like, grotesque 2015 where we had to watch that terrible center play. Not saying that Jalen Hawkins was as bad as Mike Person, the center, but Bates is definitely an upgrade, and Hawkins is more than a fine backup safety. Bates is someone where it will be that residual effect, and I'm pretty sure you can ask any secondary player in Cincinnati or any Cincinnati Bengals fan, that he is someone that will make the lives of everyone around him easier. Richie Grant in particular. Grant can now be moved around. He can probably be moved a bit closer to the line of scrimmage on some certain plays, which is, I think, more of his strength. AJ Terrell, for example, it's easier to cover when you know that you have a Pro Bowl safety having your back, like right next to you. Bates is 26. His run defense grade was actually really elite according to PFF last year. But he is a ball hawk. His ball hawking percentage, according to ESPN, was, I think, third among all safeties. And I mean, this is the signing. This is the crown jewel for the Atlanta Falcons. And this is someone that he's a game changer all by himself on defense. And it just feels good to be able to get a huge fish like this. It feels good to be able to be excited about someone like this. And, the rumors are that they're front loading his contract, $23 million this year, which I think could be even smart. It shows that Fontenot's really looking forward, looking ahead. He's not looking to blow everything like this offseason, and he's going all in this offseason the way the Saints do with Mickey Loomis every offseason. So, I think it's smart to front load that contract. And, 14 mil, like, I did not think that he would sign for that cheap. And yeah, it's a hell of a move by Fontenot. I tip my cap to him on that one.
Yeah. No, it's a really fun one, and it is definitely the premier signing. So I'll make sure everybody has an opportunity to talk about this one. I don't feel like I need to say too much because I feel like we talked about Jessie Bates like so much on this show like prior to the signing. So you guys should be well aware of how I stand on Bates and how I think that he just makes the whole secondary so much better and gives everyone else in that secondary a lot more leeway to take chances, to play more aggressively, because they know that they've got an eraser behind them like Jessie Bates. So big excited about that one. Like Adnan said, it is really nice to have the team for us to like project a big ticket free agent is like, that's one thing. For them to like get a big ticket free agent is another. And then for them to get the one that we projected is like, I don't feel like that's happened in many, many years. So maybe Fontenot likes the show, or we're just vibing on some deeper level, because this was not the only signing that we agreed on, apparently. So I definitely approve of the signing. It's really exciting. Can't wait to see and hear more from Jessie Bates over the coming weeks, months, whatever. But Dave, I'll let you get the next crack here. I know you're excited about this one as well.
Yeah, and to kind of circle back to what Adnan was saying a little while ago, of course, Falcons fans since January, maybe even since December, have been saying Bates, Payne was my number one guy, and that quickly became not a thing, but Bates was the logical, like, number two, right? Just a chance to really upgrade your secondary, to provide the level of safety play that I think Ryan Nielsen's accustomed to from his days in New Orleans. That's certainly something that they've had as a strength over the years. So just a logical signing. Everybody wanted it, and it actually happened, which of course never happened. So that's a great thing all on its own. I do think it's interesting how Bates fits into the whole piece here, which I think is going to be, if they draft a Devin Weatherspoon or a Christian Gonzalez at number 8, which I think is a legitimate possibility, if they use some of their remaining cap space on getting an Isaiah Oliver replacement they feel good about, for nickel corner, or, using Casey Hayward if they keep him more in different roles, whatever it may be. I think the idea here is, cultivate a potentially elite secondary, which is something that, Falcons haven't had for a little bit, would be very nice to have. And then have one hell of a pass rush up the middle until you can figure out that edge rushing piece that has eluded the Falcons seemingly for decades now. And I think it's a good plan. And I think, Bates, Elliss, and Onyemata are all kind of a piece, which is, here's where we're going to be strongest, is, right up the middle. We're going to do our best work in the middle of the field. And I think that's something that the Falcons haven't been able to say for a very long time. So it's very difficult not to like these signings, but I think with Bates, it's like a slam dunk that, so long as he's healthy and out there, he's going to be a force for good. And with Terrell, with Grant on the rise, with potentially another elite young corner coming in, this secondary is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So just, I was waiting for that notification to come in. I was nervous it wasn't, like Adnan said, maybe the Browns were going to scoop him up or something. So huge relief to see it go wire to wire from like, hey, this guy would be great for the Falcons, to here he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to touch on Dave's point about
Yeah,
the
go for it.
durability, he has missed 3 games in 5 seasons.
Yes. So definitely knock on wood, but yeah. But yes,
that's my standard disclaimer. I say it every time.
No, you're correct. You're correct. But durability does play a part in
it does.
any of these signings. Like, you do want players who have been healthy and who have that proven track record of health.
Yeah. Alan, you want to wax poetic about the Jessie Bates signing as well?
Yeah, because I'm thrilled about it. He's been on my wish list for a bit. You want to have that organizer, that communicator. Like we talked about a couple years ago, Ricardo Allen was that player just that knew how to organize the defense, get players in their spots pre-snap, and just be that vocal presence. I think Jessie Bates is that player. Like the Bengals defense was largely forgotten about for years. They were a pretty anemic unit. And all of a sudden, even though they didn't have that star power, they were slowly becoming a top 10 unit where just Bengals defense was just organized. It made teams work for yards. You weren't going to get explosive plays on them, and then they would create turnovers here and there. To me, besides maybe Trey Hendrickson, the reason why the Bengals defense emerged under Lou Anarumo was because of Jessie Bates. So just to have that leader is so valuable, especially for a defense that's rebuilding themselves. I know Gray Jarrett's a leader, but someone on the back end to just keep guys organized. And because we saw plays get behind the Falcons secondary quite a bit last year, whether it was the Bengals, Panthers, or Saints games. So just have him there. Like, even if he doesn't have the interceptions that he once did, say like back in 2020, it's just making sure you prevent those big plays and make sure that everything's on point when it comes to run defending, closing down those gaps and those open field tackles. It's just, you just want someone that can clean up potential disasters while having that playmaking ability. And given the level of quarterback play in the NFC South, we hope that opportunities will be there to produce turnovers. So absolutely thrilled with the signing, and we're glad it finally happened, because I just feel like this defense desperately needed a leader on the back end.
Yeah, no, it's so good for so many reasons, and I think it does maybe help give us a clue to maybe where they're planning to put their chips, at least to start off this defensive rebuild, which is to maybe let's get the secondary where it needs to be. It's a lot closer, and we'll sort of go to the front seven. They're not going to neglect it necessarily, but maybe they'll make a concerted effort to fix one unit at a time instead of trying to do scatter shot, a couple of guys here, a couple of guys there, because I think the secondary is a lot closer, and I'll definitely touch on that more when we answer some of these chat questions and donation questions. We're gonna do that just towards the end. So if you guys, Vilvats and Noah, I got you guys questions. We're definitely gonna get to those, and anybody else will get to yours as well. But I just wanted to make sure we got through the signings before we got derailed by too much draft talk or anything like that. But yeah, we definitely got those guys. So just stay tuned. Yeah, we could talk about Bates probably a whole show, and I probably will do a whole show on Bates at some point. But let's move forward. Camera's all blurry. There we go. Let's move forward with the next signing. This is my choice, dealer's choice now. So I'm gonna touch on Taylor Heinicke, of course, because he's my guy, right?
Cracking bottles.
Yeah. No, Taylor Heinicke, I just think he makes so much sense for the Falcons in a lot of different ways. He fits Arthur Smith's scheme a lot better than he fit the Commanders' scheme. He's a guy that is very athletic, is not afraid to use his legs. He loves to throw shots off play action. He's sort of like he's not the opposite of Marcus Mariota, because you'd think the opposite of Marcus Mariota would be like unathletic. So he's like the opposite of Marcus Mariota, like mentally, in that Mariota was very risk averse and very careful with the football, sometimes to a fault. And like Heinicke is definitely the opposite, where he loves to chuck it deep. He loves to take chances with the ball. He loves to put it out there. And sometimes it works great. Sometimes he turns the ball over. It's definitely fun to watch. I think that's why he was very popular with Commanders fans, was like, look, we may not be winning a lot of games, but at least Heinicke's fun. And he is. So definitely appreciate that aspect. But I think he is an experienced veteran. He's not really that old either. I think he's 28. So he certainly has a lot left in the tank, and is a guy that's been comfortable being a backup, but can start if needed. I think he can provide a lot of veteran mentoring to Desmond Ridder. But I think he also is like enough of a presence to sort of push Ridder in like a constructive way. But I don't think he's really going to threaten the starting job unless Ridder really struggles. Or Heinicke just has like it's some kind of crazy good offseason. But this also brings into question, like the larger thoughts on the team's quarterback plans. And right now with this signing, it does seem like the plan is Ridder with Heinicke as the veteran backup. And I would be surprised if they added another significant addition at quarterback. But that's something that you guys can touch on as well. Did anybody else want to touch on Heinicke?
Well, he he does have the Gwinnett, or he did set the Gwinnett County single season record with 4,200 passing yards his senior year, and he had 44 touchdowns that year. So, Collins Hill legend Taylor Heinicke, Gwinnett County legend Taylor Heinicke. Yeah, I didn't think I'd reach back for the high school stats in this show.
I didn't have those ready to go, so I'm glad you did.
But it's a low risk signing, honestly. Like, you look at the way they structured his contract, $5 million cap hit this year. If they want to part ways with him, it's the same way as they structured the Mariota contract. First year is fully guaranteed, obviously. Second year is almost none of it's guaranteed. Next year, it'll go up to a $9 million cap hit, $2 million dead cap. You essentially, if you get rid of him after this year, you've essentially only lost $7 million total over 2 years, which is not very much. But he's a high-end backup. Like, he is someone that is one of the better backups in the NFL. Over the past 2 seasons, Heinicke has played in 23, 24 games. He started 23, 24 games for various reasons, injuries to the starters in front of him. Last season, Carson Wentz got benched in favor of Heinicke after he got hurt. Even after he was healthy, the Commanders decided to stick with Heinicke because, he was giving them more than Wentz was. He has a 12-11-1 record as a starter, which is, right at just above 500. He beat the Falcons twice. Like, he beat the shit out of the Falcons twice, actually. And a lot of it is incentives laden. So he has up to $6 million in incentives over the life of the contract. I think this will be one of those. This will be a quarterback competition in camp. It's not a given that Desmond Ridder is going to be the starter, guaranteed. Desmond Ridder is the heavy favorite, and this regime has as much incentive as possible for Desmond Ridder to be their starter. But if Ridder struggles throughout the season or in training camp, if Ridder gets hurt, then Heinicke's someone that can come in and just sort of keep the train on the tracks, so to speak. It's not like you're not putting all of your eggs in the Ridder basket. Like, Heinicke can come in and give you proficient game management at the very least, which,
Yeah.
I mean, in this division, that could be all you need.
That might be enough. Yeah. I think he's like Marcus Mariota, but a better fit for what the Falcons are trying to do. Like with their current personnel, we'll see if they make any other moves in terms of the receiving core. But, Marcus Mariota was just a terrible fit with Kyle Pitts, who should be a featured part of your offense. And Taylor Heinicke, I think, is not going to hesitate to chuck that ball down to Kyle Pitts. He's down there somewhere, right? I think that's Heinicke's MO. So definitely excited to see that. Anybody else have thoughts on that one before we move on?
Just that the structure is interesting, and I think it sets the Falcons up with some flexibility next year. So, like, if Ridder is your guy, he excels this year, which is the ideal best case scenario. then you have a backup under contract for pretty reasonable dollars who's, again, a pretty decent fit for your offense, skilled enough to make multiple starts if you need him to. If Ritter really isn't that guy, but you still like him as a backup, then it's pretty easy to move on from Heinicke and go ahead and get your next guy as a starter. So it is like, from a contract standpoint, they're in good shape there. And then, while I may have preferred Brissett for one reason or another, I do think that he's a solid signing. And if he has to start games, which again, hopefully that's not the case because Ritter is healthy, Ritter is playing really good football. You trust that he can keep you in games and win some for you. So that is a plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really a best of both worlds thing where also like, and we're going to have a more wide ranging conversation with this on a future show. We can't really touch on it too much tonight because there's like so many signings to get to, but like the team's plans at quarterback are something that I think we have better insight into now with this signing and with their, seeming commitment to at least giving Desmond Ritter as much of a chance as possible to start for a year. And we'll talk about that, but I think also the way this contract is set up, sort of leads to the next part of that conversation, which is, in 2024, if Desmond Ritter's not it, what do they do then? And the answer is they have a lot of flexibility. So we'll definitely talk more about that on a future show because it's a big thing to get to. But got a lot of other moves to talk about. I feel like last year we would, like, at this point would have been like, okay, well, we talked about a couple of re-signings and, Lorenzo Carter, and that's it. No shade intended to Lorenzo Carter, but just that was pretty much all that we had, like all off season. So, yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about the trade next. The trade for Jonnu Smith, the tight end, most recently with the Patriots, but before that, made famous by Arthur Smith, where he, I think, scored 8 touchdowns, had almost 500 yards as sort of a part-time player with the Titans. Sort of a unique tight end, sort of like a shorter tight end, H-back sort of guy. The type of guy that just screams Arthur Smith, really. Arthur Smith loves his short kings at tight end, and by short, I mean like 6'3". So short in the context of NFL tight ends only. They're still, very tall lads. But I love it. It was just a 7th round pick. Obviously, the financials, it's expensive contract. That's why they were able to get him so cheap. But it's nice when you have money because you can take on players that are expensive for very little compensation as long as you're willing to pay the money. And I think he's more valuable to the Falcons probably than any other team. I really do like the move. But anyone else have thoughts on the Jonnu Smith trade? That was one of the more surprising moves, I think.
It just comes down to formation flexibility, just having that other weapon, because we do know the Falcons have to enhance their supporting cast a little bit, given that, once Pitts went down, it was kind of very much one-dimensional to Drake London. So the fact that you now have this tight end who can block, who can be used as a receiver, maybe it'll help get Pitts more outside or even more in the slot. It's just create mismatches, and I think that's what Arthur Smith, one of his biggest specialties is. And you also could devise a couple of funky plays, like we saw Jonnu Smith run a couple under routes. I even saw a highlight where they ran a toss design for him, and he took it for like 30 yards. So can we get a drive of like Cordell Patterson and Jonnu Smith just run the ball 4 times each? Let's just get wild. Like, it's just, that's the type of versatility you get with him, and just for a 7th round pick, why not? Because look, at the end of the day, like, the statistics, that Patriots offense was a total disaster. I didn't think it was even that good in 2021, but we know this year was a disaster. So I think a large part of his lack of production just came from being a poor scheme fit and just the Patriots being totally unimaginative offensively. So absolute home run, this move. I think his impact will be felt more off the stat sheet than on the stat sheet. I think you get a couple of splash plays here and there, but for most part, I think just creating mismatches, blocking, and a couple key 3rd down conversions. And of course, let's not forget the red zone. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the Titans-Ravens playoff game where the Titans upset them. Jonnu Smith had a tremendous touchdown catch on the first drive where Tannehill threw a nice dime to him and he got both feet down. Like, that contested catch ability, it's valuable in Arthur Smith's offense. So absolutely love this move.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of it as well. And you're right. Like, that last season with Arthur Smith, 8 touchdowns. Like, he had less than 500 yards. I think he had like 483. So it wasn't like there was any slouching there, but it was like 8 touchdowns. So this was a guy that was getting those touchdowns and was a red zone weapon. And that's in some ways that's more valuable than just the raw yardage, because I think the Falcons have some yardage guys. They don't necessarily need every single guy to be like, oh, this is a guy that's going to get 800 yards. It's like, maybe we need some guys that are going to get 8 touchdowns, get some more red zone productivity going. But yeah, anyone else got Jonnu Smith takes?
Yep.
I
was just going to say, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Dave, it's your website.
I was just going to say.
It's your website, yeah.
I was just going to say that, on the red zone piece, we saw Pruitt, Michael Pruitt just last year kind of excel as a weapon in the red zone for the Falcons out of nowhere. And he's still a player I'd like to see come back if they're willing and able to do that, because I think he does a lot of things well. But, I think the way to think of it is, they were able to turn Pruitt out of nowhere into a guy who was useful in those kinds of scenarios. Now replace him with Smith, who is a guy that Arthur Smith is familiar with, has used effectively before for a couple of full seasons when he was running the Titans offense, and try to imagine what that might look like. So I think the Falcons are not a finished product on offense. I think their wide receiver depth chart is a little bit alarming, even if they end up moving guys around. But I think Smith is a huge help for them in terms of what they're going to be able to do when they're getting ready to score, which is something that they've needed to get better at doing for a long time.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and then please go ahead, Adnan, for deferring to the boss man. Good move.
Well, I know how to look out for myself. Jonnu Smith in his 6-year career, his 2 best seasons came in 2019 and 2020 when Arthur Smith, was his offensive coordinator. Well, Arthur Smith was pretty much the coach of that entire Titans offense because Mike Vrabel focused on the defense more so. But yeah, Smith was, 11 touchdowns over the course of those 2 years, had over 400 receiving yards in each season. He'll be an upgrade in that second tight end position, in that pure tight end position, let's say, over Firkser and Michael Pruitt last year. I think that, as Alan said, this will free Kyle Pitts up a bit more to, go. We'll probably see Kyle Pitts more in that X receiver role than anything else this season, where he can really, make use of his athleticism and catching prowess. But yeah, Jonnu Smith, like, that Titans offense was really, really successful those couple seasons. They were a playoff team. They were a team that won some games in the playoffs with Jonnu Smith as the primary tight end. And now Jonnu Smith comes in Arthur Smith's scheme, which he knows like the back of his hand, and he's now the secondary tight end behind, what we hope is a generational tight end with Kyle Pitts. So I think Arthur Smith was really, licking his chops at the prospect of reuniting with Smith. The contract is, it's not amazing for the team because the Patriots really overpaid him. I don't know what they were thinking on that one, but he's going to restructure. I think that the cap hit will go from like around 11 million, which is what it was originally for the Falcons. I'd imagine it'll go down to like 7.
Yeah.
Next, that'll add some dead cap next year. I don't, unless he has a really spectacular year, I think they probably will try to renegotiate his deal either way next year because it'll be a $12 million cap hit. As of now, it's no dead cap, but after the restructure, it'll probably be a couple million. So, this is another low risk, moderate reward move in that you paid a 7th rounder, which is, you had 3 of them this year. I don't think that they were even interested in making all of those picks either way in the 7th round. And you got a guy who should be an immediate contributor and who had, his best time in the NFL with your active head coach. You got him on essentially, that 1-year deal if you want it. And if he plays really, really well, you still have him locked in for next year. And then you can maybe even talk about maybe an extension and possibly lowering that $12 million cap. But either way, I don't think that they're planning on paying him $12 million next year.
No,
Can,
no.
can I mention two things?
Yeah, go for it.
One thing, let's also keep in mind they turned the Dean Marlowe trade to Jonnu Smith, which I think is really nice business.
And that was that 7th rounder they got from Marlowe from the Buffalo Bills.
So I think that's pretty sweet. And be on the lookout for screens. And I know screens have been kind of not been all that successful in Atlanta, especially I'm getting bad flashbacks to seeing Hayden Hurst try to design screens from Dirk Cutter to Hayden Hurst, which always seem to be underwhelming. So I'm looking forward to seeing more screens because that's one thing Tennessee really utilized with Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely in agreement there. I think Arthur Smith is one of those guys that's willing to do weird stuff, especially with his tight ends. He's obsessed with that. So yeah, I'm expecting to see some crazy stuff with Jonnu Smith. I think it'll be fun. And we've already seen it work in Tennessee. So I'm pretty excited about that one. I think the Falcons really needed to get more receiving targets. And I tried to stress in earlier shows that it doesn't necessarily have to be wide receivers. Obviously, they still need some, but maybe it could be tight ends. It could be pass-catching running backs like a Cordarrelle Patterson, whatever. But they needed to get better receiving targets for this offense, and I think Jonnu Smith adds a really good one for a seventh round pick and $7 million, which isn't nothing, but he has experience in the scheme. Arthur Smith has used him well in the past. Pretty excited about that one. Yeah, and then the last major signing to talk about tonight, probably the last one we'll get to. I mean, there were more re-signings and other things, but we definitely need to talk about Kaleb McGary because that was the most recent one that came in. Kaleb McGary re-signed with the Falcons. I think it was late yesterday. For $11.5 million a year, which is drastically lower than I think anyone was predicting on a 3-year deal. And I think after we heard the news that he wasn't getting tagged, sort of the tenor changed to, they are probably going to let him test the market. I don't know what happened. I don't know if the market was not as robust as everyone was expecting. I mean, I think Spotrac had his market value at like $16.5 million. So it's odd that he signed for so little. Maybe he just wanted to stay in Atlanta. Maybe, who knows? But I'm certainly happy to have him back at that price, especially to have the offensive line continuity. He's really durable. Obviously, he's a great run blocker. And maybe he can continue to get better as a pass protector. I mean, he's been on that upward trajectory. So, anybody else want to talk about the return of Kaleb McGary or Magoo or whatever it was Dave was sending in the chat last night?
I mean, you get the risks with McGary, like for sure. Last season was his breakout year. You're always apprehensive when a guy was, struggled as much as he did his first 3 years, and then out of nowhere he just explodes. And last year the scheme fit was, completely tailored to his strengths, or Atlanta's scheme overall in running the ball more than half the time. He's a much better run blocker than pass blocker. His pass blocking is still a question, but still had an overall PFF grade of 86.6, which is, elite. But to get him for that cheap of a price has to be considered a bargain, because you look at what the other high-end tackles got, going into free agency. It was Jawaan Taylor, Mike McGlinchey, Kaleb McGary, and Orlando Brown as the top guys. And Brown is still unsigned, but Jawaan Taylor got 4 years, $80 million, $20 million average. Mike McGlinchey, 5 years, $87.5 million. McGlinchey's 29 years old, and he's making $17.5 million, $52.5 million guaranteed. Taylor got $60 million guaranteed. So this is another case of the Falcons getting McGary for less total than what his, competitors on the market and the guys who were considered to be in his tier got just guaranteed. And I would say bang for your buck. Like, this was a hell of a deal, and the Falcons will absolutely mitigate that risk about, if McGary was a one and done, if he was just really good last year because of the scheme and he doesn't improve or if he regresses, then I'm pretty sure the last year of that contract, we haven't seen how it's structured, but I'm pretty sure it'll be mostly unguaranteed. And to get him at that cheap, like Spotrac projected him at making $17.5 million. I wasn't personally comfortable with him making that much, especially not long term. But the 3-year deal also mitigates that risk a little bit. And if you told me that you would get him back at that price, I wouldn't believe you because I thought there was no way that they were gonna, get him for anything less than at least $15 million, especially after Taylor's contract. But this shows, a hell of a job by Fontenot to be patient, to not, panic franchise tag him, and to really, sort of use your leverage here because the Falcons didn't have to retain McGary. If it, would have sucked if they didn't, but you could have easily gone into the draft and sure, tackle would have been your top need, but you could have easily gone and at pick number 8 replaced him with a tackle from the draft, and instead, you let the market work itself out. You didn't give him that $18 million franchise tag, and you ended up retaining him for a very, very reasonable rate. And now the Falcons, I think, are one massive step closer to being able to go straight BPA in the draft.
Yeah. No, and I think it makes a lot of sense from that angle. Like they have said in press conferences for years that they want to fill needs in free agency and target BPA in the draft, and this signing definitely is another step towards that by not creating a massive hole at tackle, by not re-signing McGary. So yeah, absolutely, you're onto it there. Real quick, because a lot of people have asked about it, we won't really know what the remaining cap space is for like a couple days. Over the cap is not updated. I know they still say they have like 44 million, but it's lower than that, a lot lower. It's probably less than 20 now. I don't know what it is. Like I've been on vacation, so I haven't manually input the deals myself. Maybe I could have told you if I did all that work, but over the cap will update when they get the official actual contracts, which takes a few days. So check back maybe like Friday on Over the Cap or Spotrac or whatever, and you'll get a better idea of how much money they actually have. But we're not really going to know for sure for a couple days. So just letting you guys know, that's why you're not getting a firm number from anyone, because we don't know. Yeah, I mean, it could be 9 million. It could be different. I don't think anyone has the actual numbers at this point. So yeah, anybody else want to touch on the re-signing of Kaleb McGary before we tackle a few questions here?
No, just kind of second what you guys have said. Is it's a hell of a deal. It's certainly a better deal than I would have expected them to get after not tagging him, after getting this close to the opening salvo of free agency. So kudos to them. And I think, even if he falls back to earth a little bit this year, the thing that he does best, run blocking, is something that, he's fairly consistently done well. And he should continue to be an asset there. And so long as he doesn't get Desmond Ridder killed, I think it's a good signing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I hope he can continue to improve as a pass protector, and that's what he's done each of the last 2 years, so I'm hopeful. And to be fair to Kaleb McGary and all offensive linemen, improving and hitting your stride towards the end of your rookie contract is not unusual. Like it commonly happens. It's always nerve-wracking when it happens right before a contract gets given out, but it's not that weird. This is a position group that does typically take time to mature to reach that full potential. So it doesn't surprise me or alarm me that much. But again, if we were talking about like 18 million, 17 million a year, which I think was what we were expecting, that's a huge risk. But at 3 years, 11.5 per, I mean, it's very fair. And I would even say team friendly at this point. So I have no complaints whatsoever at that price. Yeah. Well, let's tackle a couple questions here. We got Vil Vats with the $5. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate that. He says, with all the free agent moves that have been made so far, who would you target in the first round if you were the Falcons? Yeah, I almost like blurted this out earlier, but yeah, I mean, right now I think it's probably Christian Gonzalez for me. I do think he's more likely to be there after the Lions signed Emmanuel Mosley. I mean, that doesn't necessarily lock them out of targeting a corner high, but I think the Lions are probably hoping to get Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson, whoever falls. I think Seattle will probably take one of those two. So, and I think that's why they went and spent big on a corner. So with the Falcons seemingly keeping Casey Hayward, which I think is a little bit of a surprise. I think maybe Casey Hayward is who they want to play the slot, and that they're going to go get Christian Gonzalez at 8. It could also be Bijan Robinson, of course. So, but who do you guys have any have your thoughts changed on who you want to take at the top of the first round for the Falcons at this point? Anyone?
Well, if they changed from a couple days ago, because I assumed after seeing McGlinchey and Taylor's contracts that we weren't going to retain McGary. So I was, preparing myself for Broderick Jones or Campbell to, cover that right tackle hole, because it was either, you take one of those guys or you go into next season with Jermaine Ifedi as your right tackle or one of these other cheaper options. But right now I'm sort of more. I mean, Gonzalez is a really good one. Right now I'd shift more towards Skoronski. He is arguably the best offensive lineman in the draft, and you still have that hole at left guard. And I think that he will be able to fill that hole hopefully for the next decade if you take him, and he would be he would give you hopefully eventually the best guard tandem in the NFL between him and Chris Lindstrom. Plus, you sign a center. I know one of the questions will be about further free agent signings, so I'll leave it alone for that question. But you have a chance to really build, a super elite, a top 5 offensive line immediately next season.
Yeah, and it would give you a cheap left guard that's potentially an elite player. And we also know they don't care about positional value, so that would check out as well from that front. But yeah, anybody else have anything they want to add on that particular question? Or
I think Adnan nailed it when it comes to Skoronski.
Yeah, could be for sure. I know they met with him at the combine for sure. So yeah, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
No need to be sorry. No, I was just gonna say I think give me the top corner or the top edge rusher on the board if it's a guy you really like. I think the Falcons may go through free agency without addressing either of those in major fashion, and I think that's pretty telling if that's the case. So I hope it's one of those guys. Wilson, Gonzalez, just either one would make me happy. There are other guys that would make me happy too, but if you're gonna lock in on a position of player, I think that's where I'd go.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Next question we have from Noah Cook with the $10. Thanks so much, Noah. Appreciate that, man. He says, what a time to be alive. All I want now is Darius Slay or DeAndre Hopkins. Anyone else you guys think we should target that would fit the scheme? Yeah, I mean, in the interest of making my top 5 free agents list correct, I've already missed on, I think, one of, but they've signed 2 of my top 5. So if we could get Darius Slayton here, that would make it 3, and I think that's pretty awesome. But I do think Darius Slayton would be a good value if he's even still out there. I honestly haven't been paying that much attention. I think he is, but yeah. And
Slayton or Slay? Both are Darius's.
Oh yeah, Slayton. Yes, I mean Darius Slay obviously, but yeah, Slayton. Yes, both. I believe both are still out there. But in terms of the wide receiver, Darius Slay, ton. Now you're gonna mess me up every time I say it, but yeah, no, that's. I think a wide receiver would be good if they can get somebody like a Darius Slayton, without spending too much. But again, I don't know how much money they have left, so they may need to sort of, keep it in the bag for now, for the draft and training camp and whatnot. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, anyone else have free agents that they're hoping to sign here with the last bit of money that they have, or maybe a lot of money that they have, depending. Not really sure.
You know who's available that I'm really surprised that don't think I've seen one team linked with him is Isaac Sumalo, who I thought was a huge asset to what the Eagles put together on the offensive line. Like his run blocking was unreal. Like the holes that he was creating. And now, Grant, look, I know he was alongside Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, but you want to talk about a tone setter, a mauler, someone that has that positional versatility too. Even though he played right guard this previous season, he's played left guard in the past. So I think he's going to cost a lot. Maybe he's kind of going through the Kaleb McGary experience, which is kind of hilarious to say, where his value isn't as high, maybe because he's a little older and he was a part of such a dominant offensive line. But if you just want a pure baller, someone that could do serious damage in run game and hold his own and pass protection, I would love to see him involved. I know I just said Skoronski, but when it comes to premium free agents left, like I think Slay's a pipe dream. I think DJ Chark would be cool, but someone I think could still make a huge impact because you want to continue to add solidity to offensive line. That's why I think bringing back McGary at the price was a great move because his chemistry with Chris Lindstrom, you could just tell, especially on run plays, they were so on point, especially with those pin and pulls. So I thought they could get free agent, and the price is right. Isaac Sumalo, bring him home.
And his hair is like like that hair is just incredible. It would.
It is. Yeah. That adds at least $2 million to the contract price, I think.
How do you think Paul Soliai got paid that much?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's why Dave's so underpaid.
Oh, got him, man. That was double.
Wow.
Double damage.
Out of
you
nowhere.
really buried him there. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Dave. It was just right there.
Just a Wednesday night, I'm minding my business, man.
Dave just catching strays in the chat. Yeah.
All day.
But sticking with the free agency theme, one guy that I'm shocked that the Falcons haven't even signed by now is Ben Jones,
Right. Yeah.
the former Titans center. Like, this is a guy who absolutely knows Arthur Smith. Like, this is a guy who had a lot of success with Arthur Smith in Tennessee. He's older. Yeah, he's, 33? I don't care. Like, he's someone who I think will be able to come in and, give you 2 solid years of legitimate starter play. And I think that would be an upgrade over what we've gotten with Hennessy and Dahlman. We gave Hennessy and Dahlman, the full opportunity last year, and I think they more so disappointed. But yeah, like Ben Jones, like what I fully woke up today expecting the Falcons to sign Ben Jones today. And, I'm kind of shocked. Like, no team has been linked with him either. Apparently the market for centers is a lot lower than expected. So I'm pretty sure you could get him for a lot cheaper than expected as well. He'd certainly be cheaper than the McGary deal that McGary just signed. So, that's someone where it can be a very affordable free agent that can really help solidify the offensive line. And, if we go the route of signing Ben Jones, and if we go the route of drafting Skoronski, you're talking about potentially 5+ starters, including arguably the best guard in the NFL in Chris Lindstrom. And I think that would constitute a top 3 offensive line in the NFL. And what better asset for Desmond Ridder in his, first full year as a starter than to give him that kind of offensive line, the same way that you gave Matt Ryan that kind of offensive line way back in 2008.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right.
I gotta.
go ahead. Yeah,
I gotta
go
throw out
for
my
it.
favorite
Yeah.
real quick. I was going to say Strk as well, but I also have to say Justin Houston. Right.
Oh yeah.
You got a young outside linebacker group. You're probably not going to get a super expensive top guy. Why not bring in a really experienced veteran who can help out your young guys, who still has it, still a great pass rusher, and most importantly, would finally, sort of avenge me because I've wanted him ever since he came out in the draft. So,
yeah, there you go.
Let's
Sounds
not
good.
hope for any social media posts if they just miss out again. That was not ideal. If you remember that from a few years ago.
Yep.
oh yeah. Well, I've done that a couple times over the years.
The clowny one? What?
Oh, the club. Yeah,
that one was the best one.
If he signs, that would also I'd get to boast about that.
Oh man, I forgot he's available. We should be on Corey Davis watch if he gets
for
like
sure.
similar to Ben Jones. I think Corey Davis would be a good fit, good low
Yeah.
risk, potential high reward signing.
Yeah, I do wonder if they're waiting on
Yeah.
him to see if he gets released. For sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Because we know someone that came out of the darkness doesn't particularly want him in the wide receiver.
That's true. So,
But also, just to add to the point about the cap space, if the team really wanted more cap space, it can easily be done. I think they're trying to hold off on it, but restructuring Matthews and Grady Jarrett, like that will get you a boatload of cap space. So if they really have someone that they agree to deal with that's very high end, or someone that's really high on their wish list, they can easily go that route. And cap space right now isn't an issue. They can always get more. And I will say that I think they're trying to avoid that. I think they're trying to avoid kicking that can down the road. But if you do see a report that the Falcons are restructuring either of those contracts, then I would expect a report of a big signing to very closely follow that as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me rapid fire some of these last ones here because we're already like 9 minutes over. We got Jason Gaines with the $2. What's up, Jason? Thanks so much, brother. He says, great to see the Falcons take multiple starters away from Matt Ain's defense. They can stay in cap hell. Oh, by the way, has Aaron Freeman moved into that penthouse suite near the water on Kaleb McGary Island yet? I'm sure he's happy about that one. I'm sure he is. He was on the McGary Island train for like multiple years, so I'm happy for him that one eventually paid off. We got Brandon with the $1. What do you think about grabbing Carl Brooks? For those that don't know, he's like the defensive lineman for Bowling Green, sort of like a day 3 type of guy, maybe higher depending on how much you like him. Technically, he is already a Falcon. Yes, the Bowling Green Falcons. Shout out. Yeah, I mean, I like Brooks as like a day 3 pick. I don't think he like super elevated his stock this draft season, but he's definitely an intriguing guy, sort of a unique body type. So yeah, he's interesting. And then I know Jason, this one this question already got sort of answered because Alexander Madison did just re-sign with the Vikings, but he was asking about signing former Vikings running back Alexander Madison. So yeah, unfortunately he's already back. He also asked about Isaac Sumalo, who we did just discuss, or bring back Wilkinson and Zacchaeus. Yeah, I mean, I would bring back Elijah Wilkinson if they don't add another like impact guy there. I think that Wilkinson did a fine job. Actually, sort of a better pass protector than run blocker, which was weird on the Falcons' offensive line. But I thought he was perfectly competent when he was healthy. And then yeah, Zacchaeus. I mean, that one makes a lot of sense as long as it's not too expensive. So yeah, appreciate everyone's questions for sure. Free agency is just beginning. We will be getting to a lot more of the re-signings and other signings, and I'm sure there'll be more over the next week when we come back for another episode next week. But I do appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave us that 5-star review if you're listening to the podcast audio. And yeah, I want to thank all of tonight's wonderful co-hosts and guests, starting with the boss man, Dave Choate at the Falcoholic himself. Dave, anything you'd like to plug?
Maybe hair plugs. I don't know. But
man,
Sorry, Dave.
I'm so sorry, Dave. I didn't know he was going to do this. Yeah,
You should have.
he doesn't want the show, so you should know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no, it's I think we've gotten through the initial rush of free agency, so like just look for us to kind of try to digest it from a big picture, see how closely this hews to what the Falcons have been saying about the way they're going to build their team, and I'm personally really excited to see the draft coverage, the prospect profiles and so forth that I know you guys are cooking up in the coming weeks. So there'll be a lot of great stuff. It's an exciting time to be a Falcons fan for a change, which is great. So just hope you stay tuned.
Yeah, it's very exciting free agency for the first time in forever. So definitely happy about that one. Also joining us tonight, Alan Strk at Alan Strk on the Twitters. Alan, well, I already asked you how you were doing, but I would like to know if you have anything you'd like to plug.
I definitely have a couple pieces coming soon. Obviously, we'll do something with free agency roundup. I'll also bring back the roundtable, get a couple of the writers on the site to put together a nice breakdown of some of the signings and re-signings. And yeah, I'm thrilled. It's been a long time coming. Just wanting to see more talent on the roster, like players that they invested in, not undrafted free agents and hopeful 1 year, $5 million deal. It's like, okay, we got some major investments in now. Let's see what they're building. So yes, fun times ahead in an NFC South division that's very action-packed this offseason. Like I think is I know, look, this division's getting mocked as the worst in the NFL, and it is, but the entertainment and the competitiveness will be there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Also with us, co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you'd like to plug?
Just plugging the Falcoholic. We're breaking all the news. We have our reacts. I had my article this morning grading day 2 of yesterday's legal tampering. I do want to, just say it is, really, really cool for the Falcons, where, you see this plan, this grand scheme plan, where you have to be patient at the beginning, and you are patient throughout those first 2 years of the Fontenot era, and it's so nice to be able to harvest what you sow. And now we are in the harvest, and now we are enjoying the most action-packed free agency period ever, like that I can remember as a Falcon fan, at the very least, probably in this team's history. It's so action-packed. We've been talking for an hour and a half. We didn't even mention the Chris Lindstrom extension.
No, we didn't have time. There's still like a bunch more stuff we're going to get to next week.
Yeah.
We should spread the content out a little bit, right?
Yeah,
So.
we literally didn't even have time to mention the biggest contract for a guard in NFL history. But yeah, the other thing is, big shout out to the viewers. We had 230 concurrent viewers at one point. Everyone was craving that, that free agency news. And Duncan in the chat, yes, that was a ginger ale that I had tonight. But yeah, shout out to you guys, and I'm looking forward to, enjoying the coming off season with the viewers, and of course our draft party, which always has hundreds of people. But definitely it is very exciting times right now, and hopefully we look back on this off season as sort of a turning point for this team.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping that's the case. I know we all are. So, guys, thank you so much once again for watching, for listening. I'm Kevin at Falcoholic. Kevin, check out the community Discord server, which is right there. If you're watching the video, it's also in the show description for the podcast and the YouTube video. Join us there. If you want to support us, check it out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Guys, we'll be back next Wednesday with another live show. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of the first few days of NFL free agency. It seems to be starting earlier and earlier with the legal tampering period, but I don't think we're done. I think we got some more coming. So stay tuned to thefalcoholic.com. Thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks to all the co-hosts and guests tonight for pitching in, and we will see you next time, guys. Have a great night.